once the expectation catches up with, the realism that maybe he won't get what he wants, then maybe the Eagles can come in and get him that 1-year deal. It certainly makes sense. He's familiar with the NFC East. He gets to play against the Giants twice a year. He gets to play opposite a very solid veteran in Darius Slay. I mean, there are a lot of positives to come into Philadelphia, but the Eagles have been consistent all off season about talking up, the players, the young players they have at the cornerback position. So I wouldn't say it's a screaming need. It probably is in a lot of people's minds. They just don't have that experience and that veteran type guy on that other corner.
You ready to go, Ed Kracz? You
hey, let's do it, guys. Let's do it, man. Let's go.
All right, you're ready. You're positive.
Ready to roll.
You ready to
Schedule
go?
day. You ready for the schedule, Ed Kracz? How exciting is this? On the pantheon of great days in Ed Kratz's life, where's NFL schedule day?
Oh, man. Gosh, maybe bottom 50.
Oh.
No, I'm excited. I'm excited. It's always nice to see where, when they're playing and, what days you have to travel.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess from that perspective, it's pretty cool. But yeah.
Detroit starting away. The only hotel rooms in the country, you still have to move the furniture to find a plug, Ed.
Well, you're staying in all the wrong places, John. You got to stay on the other side of the tracks. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's where they're going to open, right? I mean, that's the report. Jeff McClain, that's the Inquirer. But I also saw another report from the infamous NFL schedule leaks that they were going to go to Arizona.
Infamous, yeah.
On the first weekend. So, I think McClain's a little more believable. But still, I mean.
Yeah. I had guessed Chicago. Detroit makes sense to me. I guess. I look at it last year. That's how they tend to do it. In conference, but out of division. And if you look at their opponents, I thought the most logical one, because you knew it was going to be on the road, it was Chicago. So Detroit makes a lot of sense as well.
Well, they opened in Atlanta last year.
Yeah.
So, it does make sense that they were going to go somewhere out of division. But, let's go to Detroit. Why not?
And this is a doable schedule, and that's a nice start. If McClain's got it right, Detroit, Minnesota, get out of the gates 2-0 would be very advantageous for the Eagles. All right, Eddie, I want to ask you about a new Philadelphia Eagle. That would be Nakobe Dean, who they got in the third round. Harry Roseman here on the channel said yesterday he couldn't believe as they were dropping in the third round that Nakobe Dean was still on the board, and there was no way he was trading out at that spot. He had to cross his fingers, and sure enough, he was sitting there for them. So he sung his praises and seemed genuinely excited about it. Excited enough to make him the starting middle linebacker if he performs this year in camp and in the preseason games? You think he's got a chance to start in the middle for the Birds?
I think he has a chance to play a lot, whether or not he starts, but I just think that he gives Jonathan Gannon another piece in his defense, this hybrid defense that he wants to play, and Nakobe Dean's going to fit very nicely in there. And I think if you ask me, okay, yeah, maybe he'll start, but I'm not sure he'll start. There may be games where he does, but I think he'll work his way into more of a role as the year goes on, maybe right out of the chute, depending on what kind of a camp that he has. But if you look at the 5 rookie draft picks that the Eagles have, I would put him at the top of the list of that 5, even ahead of Jordan Davis, who will probably have the biggest impact on the defense this season.
I do want to get into the draft a little bit more with you, Ed, but before I do that, I just want to say, because this is sort of breaking, Tom Pelissero reports the Steelers are bringing in Andy Weidl for a second interview. So they're deep into their second interviews. Ryan Cowden, John Spytek from Tampa, Doug Whaley got another interview. Now Andy Weidl, who is a Pittsburgh guy. His first job in the league was in Pittsburgh. Tom Donahoe hired Andy Weidl in Pittsburgh, is now out in Philadelphia. His younger brother's out in Philadelphia. smoke to the spire of Andy Weidel to Pittsburgh, you think, Ed Kracz?
Yeah, he had the first interview, and there was, the reporting that came out that the Steelers had interviewed two others for a second, and you're just waiting, for the report to come out that Andy Weidel will be in for his second interview, and here it is. So, yeah, I think it's legitimate, sure. There are connections with Pittsburgh, but, he's not the only candidate. They've interviewed several others, so he's got to go in on his second and, really, really wow them if he wants the job. And, I think there's a good chance that he can do that, and the Eagles will lose yet another member of that front office. I think that'll be their 11th defection, if you want to call it that, of the offseason. So, yeah, I think there's a good shot. Andy Weidel is the GM of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and why not? I mean, he's done a pretty good job in Philadelphia over these last couple of drafts. The Eagles brought in some talented players, and he's kind of rode shotgun with Howie on those selections. So, makes some sense that he could be the next guy in Pittsburgh.
All right, Eddie, need your take on a guy who's out there on the market. Eagles have added the free agents they have. They've drafted and added undrafted free agents. They still seem to be a little short at both cornerback and safety, at least for this Eagles fan. James Bradberry's out there. Giants released him this week. Understand the reason why. Not because he can't play, but because they structured his contract in a way that he kills them under the cap this year. They needed to save the $10 million they could do by cutting him. So he is a free agent, and he's far and away, not even close, the best free agent on the market. John likes to tell me all the time, the Eagles are a disciplined organization, which they are until they're not, like they were with A.J. Brown. When they needed to be non-disciplined and give him $25 million a year, they did just that. Are they returning to their disciplined roots? Because this just seems to be too easy for me. They have a big need at that position, a guy who wasn't expected to be, or we didn't know for sure he was going to become available, became available. How are the Eagles going to handle the pursuit of James Bradberry?
Listen, you and me and a lot of other people think they should just go out and get him and do what it takes. And, they could certainly, if he's willing to go 1 year, they could sign him to a 1 year, $10 million deal and spread that pain out over the next couple of years at $10 million. But will that be enough? That's the question. The longer Bradberry sits on the market, and I think he was released maybe Monday or Tuesday. So it's been, 2-3 days now, and he's still unsigned. So, he obviously wants more than what teams are willing to pay, or he would be signed by now. So once the expectation catches up with, the realism that maybe he won't get what he wants, then maybe the Eagles can come in and get him that 1 year deal. It certainly makes sense. He's familiar with the NFC East. He gets to play against the Giants twice a year. He gets to play opposite a very solid veteran in Darius Slay. I mean, there are a lot of positives to come into Philadelphia, but the Eagles have been consistent all off season about talking up, the players, the young players they have at the cornerback position. So I wouldn't say it's a screaming need. It probably is in a lot of people's minds. They just don't have that experience and that veteran type guy on that other corner that a lot of us would like to see. But, Zach McPherson could be that guy in this defense that is going to be a lot different looking than it's been in the past. So maybe some of the pressure off those corners will be alleviated by the Eagles' ability to put pressure on the quarterback better than what they did last year. Where I'm concerned is the second safety position. I mean, not sure they have a safety yet that they can go to battle with that I'd be comfortable with. The cornerback I'm kind of okay with because I think McPherson, Tay Gowan, those guys, they might be able to do better than what we think. But it sure would make everybody feel more comfortable if Bradberry was in the house, no doubt.
Yeah, why do you think people focus more, Ed, on corner than safety? Because at least at corner, as you mentioned, they have about 7 darts to throw if you add in all the undrafted kids and Mario Goodrich and Josh Jobe and Josh Blackwell to the names you mentioned. Kerry Vincent Jr. as well, Josiah Scott, who's more of a slot, but they have a lot of cornerbacks. They don't have a lot of safeties. It's basically Anthony Harris, who we got to talk to a little bit yesterday, Marcus Epps, and Kayvon Wallace. Then you have Andre Sacheret, which it's more of a special teams player, Jared Maiden, who, is sort of in that category of unproven, although he is an Alabama guy, Jody. So that might help.
That scores extra points. But
yeah,
Kayvon Wallace, 4th round pick. Zach McPherson, 4th round pick. What's the difference?
Well, not to mention the volume too. You have 4th round pick with Zach McPherson plus a bunch of other guys, but you have 4th round pick Kayvon Wallace and not much else at safety. So why is everyone focused on corner more than safety?
Right. This question for both you two guys. Kayvon Wallace came in at an established level, a 4th round pick. Zach McPherson came in at an established level, 4th round pick. If we're willing to roll the dice with Zach McPherson and say, well, we should have a bigger desire to fill safety because we don't have as much there. Well, the top guy at both of those positions are a former 4th round pick. Do we rate McPherson that much higher than we do Kayvon Wallace at their specific positions as of right now?
Well, I think John touched on it. The depth is what really, you have Zach McPherson, but you have other guys. There's nobody really at safety. Now, realistically, you're only going to keep 4 safeties, I guess, on the 53, right, when all's said and done. And it's that 4th one. You really don't have that. I don't think you have that competition level. Like, it's not just McPherson. Tay Gowan can rise up and take that job. He's a 6th round pick.
I guess I did a very poor job of answering this question. Let me ask it both of you this way then. Who's a better player at his position as of right now? Kayvon Wallace at safety or Zach McPherson at cornerback?
If you're asking me, I would go McPherson for uncertainty reasons. I've seen too much of Kayvon Wallace. I haven't seen as much as Zach McPherson. He might be even worse, but I'm not happy with what I've seen from Kayvon Wallace. At least there's some hope when it comes to Zach McPherson. That's where I am.
Okay. Unknown, a good thing for you too, Ed, that McPherson's more of an unknown, and the unknown of McPherson is better than the known of Kayvon Wallace?
Well, I thought we saw McPherson fill in some snaps last year when Slay went out.
It wasn't great, but we saw.
It wasn't great, but, these guys are 4th round picks for a reason. It's easy to miss on 4th round picks. You have more misses than you have hits, but I would probably go with McPherson at this point, that year 1 to year 2 jump. We never saw that in Kayvon Wallace. And Wallace has a tendency to get hurt a lot, which, his availability isn't always great. So McPherson, to me, when we talked to him last year in camp, he seemed like a pretty confident guy, the kind of guy that can forget about plays, put a bad play behind him, and that's what you want at a cornerback position. So, I would put McPherson ahead of Kayvon.
But I would say this as well. I'd like to add, if I was going to bet on one of these corners, it would be Tay Gowan more than Zach McPherson. And that's just based on size, speed, athleticism. But again, so much of it is unknown. But I think Tay Gowan, he's big and he can run, and that's what the Eagles want at outside corner.
And let me follow up on something that John's been saying the last 2 days here on the show, Ed. Put it to you. How are we going to find out?
Yeah.
It's 7-on-7 practice. They're not even going to go 11. They're going to need to go undefeated again in the scrimmages that they're playing and look real good doing it. Is Tay Gowan going to win a job there? We all know the measurables. We know what they timed that in the combine a couple of years ago. How do you determine who is the guy that's going to elevate from the reserve spot to the starting spot if they don't sign a veteran corner, if they don't sign a veteran free agent?
Well, they'll have 11-on-11 team drills, once summer training camp hits, not so much in the OTAs, but, they'll be able to get a gauge in the summer. Now, is it going to be too late to trade for somebody if you feel like, hey, Tay Gowan and Zach McPherson, they're just not doing what we want them to do? Then Howie has to get creative like he did, what was it, in the summer of 2016 when they traded Matthews for Ronald Darby, or maybe that was 2017. But, they had to give up a pretty big piece. They gave up a 3rd-round pick and Jordan Matthews, who was Carson Wentz's best friend at the time, for Ronald Darby. And, they have tradable chips, Rager and Dillard. Now, I don't know if any of those guys will do it. You might have to part with like a Quez Watkins, perhaps, if you want to find a cornerback, but I think they'll have enough sample size once summer comes and they start playing more 11 on 11 as to whether or not Gowan and or McPherson can hold up in this defense.
The defense as a whole, we got a little bit of an interesting nugget from Hassan Reddick yesterday, Ed, in that they're shifting sort of the positional coaching responsibilities, and he's working with Jeremiah Washburn as sort of an edge rusher / outside linebacker. And that means, obviously Nick Rollis is working with the inside linebackers. Tracy Rocker is working with the interior. A lot of people taking this as more of a shift towards a 3-4. Now, ultimately, they're going to use multiple fronts. Going to be odd and even. Nickel is always the base defense in the entire NFL, so none of this really matters. But do you get the feeling they're going to play more 30 looks, 3-4 looks than typically fans are used to here in Philadelphia?
Yeah, you'll see some 3 front looks. I think you're going to see a lot of 5-man fronts with Davis and your 2 tackles, kind of on the interior, and then you're going to see these outside linebackers, Reddick and Kaiser White maybe, or Patrick Johnson, any of these hybrid linebackers. I think you're going to see a lot of 5-man fronts, maybe more than 3-man fronts, and that's how you're going to get your pressure on the quarterback. You're going to bring 5 every play. And your inside linebackers could be Edwards and Nakobe Dean. And then, you hold up what you can with the secondary, whether it's, Gowan or McPherson, and then Slay, and then your safety. So, yeah, I think we'll see some 3 front looks, but I think you're going to see a lot of 5-man fronts too. And they got the guys on the edge. I think they can get it done, led by Reddick. But, yeah, you're going to see a lot more multiple fronts for sure. You'll see some 4-man, some 3-man, some 5-man, and they're going to try to keep offenses on their toes and dictate what they can. And, we saw last year quarterbacks complete over 80% of their throws. So they're going to try to, cut that time down they have to throw. Even the quick throws, throwing the ball over at Jordan Davis, who's 6'6", if he comes in with his hands raised, that's not going to be an easy job for any quarterback. So I think you'll see a lot of Davis on the field, and you'll see a lot of 5-man fronts with him parked right in the middle.
All right. Want to get both you guys' takes on this one. When last we saw Isaac Seumalo on the field, he was at left guard for the Eagles, and he's probably been Wally pipped by Landon Dickerson there that the left guard position isn't necessarily available anymore. So we all assume he's moving over to right guard. Is that going to be an issue? Have we gotten a medical update as to whether he's going to be 100% good to go when camp opens or when they get their quasi practices in during the spring? What's the latest you guys are hearing on Seumalo?
Well, I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be good to go. But really, even if he's not, they have so many guys, even after they cut Nate Herbig, that they can plug in there. Jack Driscoll being one. Perhaps Cam Jurgens, if he takes to that position, it won't be an easy transition for him. But, they have some guys that can fill in there if he's not ready to go. But you're right. He was Wally pipped at the left guard spot. Howie Roseman said as much that, they love that wall they have on that left side with, Dickerson and Jordan Mailata. So Seumalo's going to the right side, whether he likes it or not. And if he can't, fend off the challenge from Driscoll or Jurgens, or I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody there, John. It's not Herbig anymore.
Suo Peta. You got to remember the Tesla stock. But I think Jack Driscoll's the way. Ed knows that the day they cut Nate Herbig, I was starting to formulate they might cut Isaac Seumalo because of how much money he makes. And the second part to my theory was Nick Sirianni loves Jack Driscoll, loves him as a player. And I'm saying, well, if they can get similar play at right guard from Jack Driscoll at a much more cost-effective price, maybe they move on from Isaac Seumalo. Turns out they were going to move on from Herbie. And Isaac's going to get that first chance, but it is something to keep an eye on.
But the offensive line coach loves Seumalo.
He does.
Yeah.
But I think the coach defers to his offensive line.
He typically does. But Isaac, you also have to realize, has played 11 games in 2 years. That's something that factors in as well. But yeah, it is. You're right, Jody. He's going to defer to Jeff Stoutland. Jeff Stoutland, I always used to joke back in the day. Ed probably heard me say it. The Eagles flow chart. It would be, it starts at Jeffrey Lurie, and people would say Howie Roseman would be number 2. I would always joke it's really Jason Peters. I'm not going to put Jeff Stoutland up that high, but I think he's higher than just about anybody but Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie. They give him a lot of, and you know what? Maybe it comes down to last year. Remember, Ed? He was going back to Alabama. The report was out there. I think it was Bruce Feldman, who's more plugged in than anybody at the college level. He was going back to Alabama, and the Eagles convinced him to stay put. And I think there was a lot of convincing by saying, look, Jeff, you're going to have your own little fiefdom. Nobody's going to bother you. Am I crazy with that conspiracy theory?
No, not at all. I mean, Stout carries a lot of weight in this organization, certainly more weight than any other assistant coach on this staff, no doubt. And he's earned it. His lines are good. He develops players that, are kind of unheralded. Look at Nate Herbig. He was on the market for 24 hours before the Jets swooped in. Jody's Jets swooped in and grabbed him up.
He got picked up faster than James Bradberry did.
Yes,
that's for damn sure.
Well, he was on waivers. What are the Jets? 3rd on the waiver wire? So he didn't last long.
Yeah, I thought they were 4th, but maybe
4th.
Yeah, but top 5 for sure. And Joe Douglas knows Herbig. I'm sure he still follows the Eagles, even though Douglas was gone when the Eagles brought Herbig in as an undrafted free agent. But you're not wrong about the Stoutland power. But, something to keep in mind first is, Jack Driscoll is Cal Ripken. He's not an Iron Man either.
Yeah, that's true. He's always hurt too.
Yeah. So he's got to find a way to stay healthy. And Siamalu, we're talking about potential summertime trades for a cornerback if things don't work out with what they have in-house and Bradberry doesn't come. Siamalu could be a part of a package as well. We talk all the time, John and me, about this being an offensive line deficient league. Teams could always use more players up front. Now, Eagles already lost Herbig. That's a big loss. Would they dare trade away a Siamalu if they, are banking on Driscoll staying healthy? Because then after that, it gets thin. I'm not a big Sua Opeta. I don't care what Jason Kelce says about him being a Tesla stock. I'm not sure he's the guy that you want manning that position over,
Well, you got Cam Jurgens. Well, as now you got to start him somewhere.
Yeah.
So
it's funny because everybody thought Dickerson was going to be the heir apparent to Jason Kelce, and he ended up at guard. Now everybody thinks Jurgens is going to be the heir apparent to Kelce, and he could end up as a guard too. And maybe next year the Eagles draft another center. I mean, who knows? But yeah, Jurgens certainly could play there. But it was funny, we talked to Kelce last week, and we asked him if he ever played guard when he first came into the league and having to make that adjustment. And he said he played 2 snaps at guard, and he gave up a sack to Jason Pierre-Paul on one of them. So that was the end of that experiment. So it's not easy. If a guy like Kelce can't figure it out, it's going to be a handful for Jurgens too. But who knows? Maybe he can.
Yeah.
All right. Let me run this one by you. Since we now know Howie Roseman is a fan of the channel because he was good enough to come on with us yesterday. Maybe he's watching today. I want to propose a trade. You tell me if this gets done. I'll play the Casa, the general manager of the Ravens, who there was a report yesterday, a guy I threw out immediately after the draft, Chuck Clark, Ravens starting safety for the last couple of years, now job in jeopardy with the fact that they signed Marcus Williams and drafted Kyle Hamilton. He did speak out yesterday and at least told sources that he wasn't happy with his situation in Baltimore. So he's going to become available if the Ravens GM calls Howie Roseman and says, listen, we'll give you Chuck Clark. You got to give me a 4th-round pick in exchange for him, but there are conditions to it that can move it up. If he plays 80, 85, we could negotiate that out. percent of the snaps for you this year moves up to a 3. And if the Eagles win the Super Bowl, it moves up to a 2. You get that whole karma thing, winning a Super Bowl rolling, that it will cost you. It's a great thing, but it's going to cost you a little bit. But you get that starting safety that you need. Cost you 4, maybe a 3, could be a 2. But if it's a 2, it's a damn good thing because they won the Super Bowl. What do you say, Howie Roseman? First Kracz, then McMullen. Step into Howie's shoes for me.
Chuck Clark. Yeah, young guy, right? Isn't he pretty young?
Yeah, 26.
Yeah.
The second kind of scares me, but hey, you win a Super Bowl, okay.
Yes,
you can have
that's the only way you got
paid
paid second is if you win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and you have the New Orleans Saints second next year, right? So, okay, we'll give you our second, and if we win a Super Bowl, it's going to be the last pick of the second round anyway, right? So, yeah, I'm in. Let's do it. If I'm Howie Roseman, I'm
Conditional.
Sure. Let's go.
Yeah.
I'll
I'd
give you
like
a
the
fourth
conditional. I'd like conditional picks because I don't mind paying if I win things.
Exactly.
Yeah. I like that part of it. I've heard Baltimore's keeping Clark, so we'll see.
Harbaugh said,
service.
we're keeping him. But John, what's your favorite line?
Yeah, they're not under oath.
Not under oath, John Harbaugh.
As
They can rethink that in a millisecond, just
But,
like that.
Well, a lot of teams are playing 3 safeties now, going to that big nickel, and Kyle Hamilton, Marcus Williams, Chuck. Who knows? They might be telling the truth if they're telling the truth. But I don't mind paying for success. So if you give me that condition, yeah, I'll jump on that because they need a safety.
You guys told me earlier, safety more than corner. Well, they got 22 guys auditioning for the other corner spot. They've only got a couple of safeties, including one kid named Blankenship who went to Northeast, West, South Tennessee, Chattanooga State. So
he's my number one.
Give me Chuck Clark.
By the way, he was my number one undrafted free agent, potentially making the 53-man roster. Not because he's the best,
right,
but because he's got the easiest path.
Well, he has to beat out Shashere. They really like Shashere as it's because, like I said, I don't think they're keeping more than 4 safeties. Maybe they keep 5, but it's going to be crowded for.
I think he might. Kayvon Wallace is not certain of a roster spot. I mean, they're at the point.
You're going to get unfollowed again. You're going to town here on Kayvon.
You're probably
He's
right.
going to unfollow you.
If they trade for a safety, if they bring in a safety and they beat out Kayvon Wallace, they'll move on from Kayvon Wallace. I don't think he's certain. And if I get unfollowed, I get unfollowed. Now, if I'm putting the odds on it, yeah, odds are he's going to be on the team. I'm saying if he has a bad camp, the Eagles will move on from him. It's not like one of those things where they moved on from Rasul and Sidney in year 3. They'll move on. They'll move on if they have to.
Well, here's another name. Here's another guy. How about a John Abram, the safety that's kind of been a disappointment in Vegas, I think, right? What about trading Jalen Reagor for him? 2 guys coming into the final year of the contract.
I'm already blocked with Jalen, so I could say whatever I want.
Well, listen, Jalen could just stand for a fresh start, whatever you say about him and his abilities.
And I like Jalen personally. I defend him. Jody will tell you. People say Jalen doesn't try. I don't believe that for a second. He tries. He's just lacking confidence. I've never seen him give up on things. He keeps himself in good shape. He works hard. I don't believe that part of it. I just think he lacks confidence and he needs a new start. And if that got me blocked, that got me blocked.
Speaking of lacking in confidence, I lack in confidence for Jalen Reagor. So if they call and offer me the safety you mentioned, Ed, I would say, oh, yeah, if you had a 4th-round pick. We'll take Reagor if you had a 4th-round pick to it. Then you got yourself a deal.
But Abram hasn't been any great shape since they drafted him.
I know, but you have to pay to get Jalen Reagor off the roster, is my point. I don't think any team is trading for Jalen Reagor at this time. All right, Ed Kracz, you did more than enough work for us. You are dismissed. Thank you very much. Where are you going week 1?
Thanks, guys.
What hotel you staying in Detroit that's better than the one McMullen's staying in?
It's not the Fairfield Inn. Yeah. Where did you say you didn't go to Detroit last year?
I didn't go. I was the one trip I didn't make last year, but I've been to Detroit, and I usually stay in Romulus, which is out near the airport.
Romulus. That's where it was at the Fairfield.
You know,
It's a Fairfield. It's in Romulus, and I had to move the furniture to find a plug.
Well, Bob Groats and I, if you ever have Groatsy on the show, we stayed out in Romulus
That's a
one
great
year,
story.
and that was ask him about Uncle Joe's.
Let me guess. Groats complained.
No,
Yeah.
No, you're lying. You're lying. Groats complains about everything. What do you lie? Why would you lie to us, Kracz?
Just ask him about Uncle Joe's. It's a great story.
Uncle Joe's. All right. We'll remember that for the next time we get Groats on. Ed, thank you very much. Have a great weekend, buddy.
Thanks, guys. You too.
Thanks.